thank you for coming on today. I mean, I met you in my early days when I was even just exploring all these AI tools because it overlapped with the documentary stuff. But got to meet people like you and Max Einhorn who have been very much diving into this sort of like where does broadcast, where does making TV shows. I'm excited for people to meet you in person today in IRL, virtual person. But really excited to hear what is your POV on. There's so much talk about creativity and innovation, and even we could just spend the whole time getting excited about new product drops like Kling, but you're very much then doing what you were starting to take us to. Like, well, then how does this apply to doing work? So excited for people to meet Colin Byrne. I'll turn the mic over to you.
Thanks. I mean, to understand a little bit about, I think to understand how I got to where I am now, you sort of have to hear it in context of what I was doing before. So I was much like you, Fred, a jobbing producer working on some really fantastic stuff. You might have seen Limitless for Chris Hemsworth. That was 3 years of my life. The very big team. I won't take all the credit for it. And this was around the time of the streamers had come in and they were throwing money at documentaries and unscripted shows that ordinarily wouldn't have got much of a budget. They suddenly decided that actually, if we throw massive mega celebs at these and increase the budget, people will watch them. And that kind of worked. It was a great experiment. It was great to be a part of. But obviously, as we have learned over the last couple of years, the streamers throwing money at everything was not a sustainable way of operating. A lot of like production companies kind of opened up just to service streamers. A lot of studios opened up just to service the streamers. And then when the streamers were basically like, well, we've got what we need now. We've got our documentary about elephants. We've got our documentary about health and living. We don't need any more, thanks. So they turned the taps off. And obviously, you guys in the States, a lot of you are from the States, you will know that, you had around the same time writers' strikes and actors' strikes. Over here in the UK, we were just basically having nothing getting commissioned. So this is probably about 3 years ago now. I basically, it was almost exactly 3 years ago to the day where I finished the contract that I did that was a long contract. Like you'd work on a production for 6 months, 9 months, maybe even a year or longer. And I was like, at the time, I was just like, well, okay, this is the quiet period. This is what happens at the beginning of every year. But it turned out not to be a quiet period at all. I think a lot of us in the media industry have been kind of shocked by how how rapidly, things started to, I won't say fall apart because there's obviously a lot of work still going on, but there just isn't as much of it anymore. A lot of people are out of work here in the UK in terms of the freelance market. It's a very large number. So that's sort of the context to sort of, where I was at that time 3 years ago. 3 years ago was also the beginning of 2023, which was a boom year for AI. And I had been sort of playing around with it before that. I mean, a couple of months prior, while still working on production, I was definitely using it. I was using Midjourney in its sort of early form to try and sort of create pitch decks and things like that. These images weren't brilliant, but they were still better than the alternative, which was spending hours trying to find what you were looking for online. And we were working on productions that required like a pitch deck for every scene. It was that's what working with these streamers is like. So I'd already started playing around with it, but it was sort of around 2023, early 23, when Midjourney got really good or sort of went to version 4. This is prior to video. This is prior to text to video or image to video. I was basically just looking at it as a way to be able to do storyboards because I can't draw. That's essentially what my whole goal was. So when all the work comes back, it's going to be great because I can do storyboards now and I can communicate my ideas better. Um, but what ended up sort of happening was that obviously the work didn't really come back. I did a few more production jobs that year and then the following year, but I started to get a little bit, people were becoming very curious about what I was doing because I was kind of on social media talking about it and this is going to be this might be something interesting. This might be something you might want to pay attention to. This might be something that might happen or become better in the future. And I was getting invited to a lot of production companies and sort of being asked to sit down with them and say, well, tell us a bit more about this. And then we would sit down and we would have a long conversation. And then I'd show them some examples of what you can do. Kind of like, nah, it's not there. It's not good enough. Come back in 6 months. You go back in 6 months and you have the same conversation. And it'd be like, how good is it now? Well, look what we can do now. We've now got video. We can, do this and that. Nah, it's not quite good enough. Come back in 6 months. So you kind of knew that at some point you were going to go through the door and someone was going to say, actually, I think we can use this now. And it's sort of, that's what the last 2 to 3 years has been like. There was a big period of sort of trying to get everybody excited about it, but ultimately being told, "Mm, this isn't going to work for us right now." And that changed probably around a year ago. I think it was like the beginning of last year that people started to take it seriously. And this was obviously also peak. It's stealing the IP. We want to be compensated. This is a terrible thing. It's taken all the jobs. So you had the two colliding at the same time. People starting to realize that it might actually be something that could be useful, colliding with, oh my God, this is the devil.
Is it like osmosis? Like eventually it seeps in, or was there a turning point in your eye? Like, was there a
No, to
project?
me, to me, it just, to me, it felt like it happened overnight. I don't even, I've spoken quite a lot with, I'm friends with some of the other sort of creators and filmmakers that I'm sure you've probably had on here, Ryan Phillips being one of them. And we sort of agreed that with something strange happened. There was something in the water last January where all of a sudden it might have been, I think it might have been to do with, Sora had started demoing stuff. And prior to that, no one was paying attention to video because it was scrappy and not very good. But then, Kling, we were just talking about Kling before a lot of people joined. Kling appeared around that time. I think people just looked at it and went, hang on a minute, maybe these lunatics are onto something. And it was from that point onwards, last year was just a very busy year for me because I had managed to sort of navigate myself into a position where I knew a lot about it, but there weren't very many people for the people I used to work for to call. They didn't know who to call except for me. And so I was working and talking with a lot of production companies a lot of the time about whether this was something that was feasible, whether this was something that could be worked out, you know, legally or ethically or whatever. We were working out pipelines for, if we use this AI generated stuff, what do we have to log? How can we try and rescue the fact that it's not very high resolution? All of that, all of the boring stuff. And now that we have sort of got through that period, and there's a lot more people now sticking their head above the parapet and saying, look at what we've just done with AI. Now people are starting to really engage. And truthfully, there's like, this is purely UK perspective. I can only speak from the perspective of unscripted television, not scripted. I don't know what is happening in the world of scripted, but in terms of unscripted, there's not there's any major production company that's operating here in the UK is either actively investigating this or is actively doing something with this. There's a lot of shows that are still in production that I can't talk about because everyone loves an NDA these days. Every broadcaster is looking at it. Some broadcasters are already slipping stuff out under the radar. So we have a relatively low budget channel on terrestrial TV here called Channel 5. It's been putting stuff out with AI in it for months. And then of course there's Sky History. We have a multi-channel here called Sky History, which is an offshoot of the History Channel. They have essentially decided that all the stuff they do now with historical recre might as well just be AI because they didn't have any money to spend on real recre, and that's why it always looked rubbish. So we can get more bang for our buck, is their opinion, with AI. And this is obviously happening at a time where, yes, the discussions are still ongoing about compensating artists and what are we going to do about copyright and whatnot. And they're obviously hugely important discussions to have. But that's not really what anybody's talking about anymore. But certainly within the industry or within production companies, all everybody just wants to know is what tools are you using? That's the number one question. I said, what are you using? How are you doing this? So the conversation has now moved away from isn't this a terrible thing to, oh yeah, I'd quite like to have a crack at this. What is it that I need to do? So
So
the things have changed hugely.
it's interesting.
Hugely.
It's interesting to see the power of a good use case. That
Yeah.
like and the utility sort of gets ahead of a lot of these questions just because it's in the news and just because you're on this topic right now. Like last week, Darren Aronofsky puts out, this, big play of his 1776 thing. And I don't know. I think there's also like you always have to read through actually posting and what's their motive to post anything. I think there's a lot of people that just do good business hating on AI. But I'm saying like in the context of this use case, of like here's just like a utility for existing broadcasters and who've historically already found kind of efficient ways to tell stories to generically refer to it. Did you see any reaction to that sort of a release from Darren Aronofsky's company?
So this is a funny one because I've been examining this. So actually, I don't know whether you knew that. I've actually worked on two series where Darren Aronofsky was an executive producer. So Limitless was one of them, and I also worked on Postcards from Earth, which was a documentary he did at Sphere in Las Vegas. So he's not. I know he's not the kind of guy who just lets stuff go out if it's crap, right? And the problem with On This Day, I actually watched it with someone I work with yesterday. Is it is a bit crap. It's the problem with it is that okay, this is and I never thought I'd ever be saying yeah something that Darren Aronofsky put out is a bit crap. That seems like something I've no right to say. But it's all it's the AI's fault and it's not the AI's fault. It's not the AI's fault because the AI I think is doing what it does, and the output is fine. Anything that I'm working on right now, the output is no better or worse. However, because the AI has the limitations of being very short in clip size, obviously we all know about the usual consistency issues and the trickery that we've got to do to make things cut. It doesn't cut very well. What they've tried to do with it, which is obviously meant to be like a stylish, sort of fast-paced little mini doc. I tell you how we described it is it's a show cut like a trailer, which is you watch the trailer and the trailer is really good because the trailer is a trailer, but the show is also cut like a trailer. And by the time you've got to the end of the 3 minutes, you've got no idea what just happened. It's like, whoa, what was that? And that I think is the problem. If you remember what happened over Christmas with McDonald's, and then the stuff with Coca-Cola. I mean, it wasn't Coca-Cola's first rodeo, but I think sometimes the problem is that people are seeing the end product, which is not very good, and saying, well, it's obviously not very good because it's AI. And I think that's a massive problem because every time something like On This Day comes out and gets slated, everybody retreats just a little bit. Everybody goes, "Ooh, okay, maybe we shouldn't be jumping into this AI world." We've got momentum right now. People are doing it. People are interested, largely because they haven't got any money anymore. That's partly the reason why there's such an interest. But we've just got to be careful, I think, because we could easily lose that momentum if we start putting stuff out that isn't very good. And I would wager, and I'm hoping there's no one from Google on the call, they would probably because Google were like, yeah, was in partnership with them and they wanted to get it out. That's probably why it went out. Uh,
Let me kind of riddle you on that because I have a I don't know. I don't know if I had such strong emotions, but maybe other people think it was also crap, and so do you. So I don't know. I kind of just thought it was another thing, and it's interesting to see people applying it, but that's just me. Do you think there's also the fact that he's still in a mindset of being like a big name Hollywood person, that in general, the way they behave is they release things. It's like a
yeah,
moment. And that's part of the hype of like, and this happens and I'm doing this. Whereas I think so much of the space seems to live in more of a behind the scenes, kind of here's something I'm working on energy, that I wonder if it had just been like he had mentioned it, I'm working on this thing, and then when it played out, it wouldn't have been like stuck in this like it's supposed to be a big deal feeling instead of it just like here's an interesting application. Like what an interesting way to talk about the fact that it's the 250th anniversary like, it was just a thing instead of like a ta-da. I don't know,
I
I
mean,
just think sometimes it's the PR that I think is also happening.
yeah, I mean, there's 2 things going on. I mean, one, he's just an executive producer on it, which, we've all worked with executive producers. That can either mean they're massively involved or they just showed up one lunchtime and gave some notes and then left. So he's probably not had that much to do with it, but his name's attached to it, and that's what the problem is. And I think that the reason it chides with people is let's think about what is actually working right now and why people uh, are engaging with AI. They're engaging with AI as program makers because it's allowing them to do things that they could ordinarily not afford to do. And I always make this point, I labor this point quite heavily. There's a big difference between someone who is using AI because they want to do something they've always done cheaper and someone who wants to use AI because they want to do something they can't afford. Two very different things. And I've had experience of both. And the former, it's not a great experience. It doesn't go anywhere. And everyone ends up disappointed and disgruntled and pissed off. But the latter, where you have people who are just sincerely just trying to do something and they can't afford to do it, they get on board, they collaborate with you, they understand the limitations or they're willing to take on board the limitations, work with you to get the best possible output. I'm working on a documentary at the moment. I can probably mention it's called We Are Stardust. It's in competition at a couple of festivals, and we're delivering the AI stuff tomorrow. And the story behind how we ended up getting involved was that it's about Stardust. There's a lot of like space sequences and things like that. And they went to a VFX company and they said, "Could you do all these sequences? There's a whole sequence about the creation of Earth, blah blah blah." And the VFX company said, "Yeah, absolutely, that'll be 200 grand." And they were like, "We don't have 200." And so they opened up there. Could this be done with AI? And obviously we could do it for a fraction of the price. And because it allowed them to do something that they wanted to do, they've been massively on board with the project. So it's what I think the problem is. The point I guess I'm trying to make with with the Darren Aronofsky thing is that all I think is that people are looking at the profile of people like that, and they're looking at the profile of Coca Cola and the profile of McDonald's and these big companies, and they're going, "You could have afforded to do this the other way. You didn't need to use AI to do this." Now, I'm not saying that they would have got the funding for something like On This Day, but they could have, if it was a passion project, they could have made it work. And I think that's what pisses people off is that, I mean, I sometimes say, I argue about AI in this way is that, look, if you can afford to use GFX, you should be using GFX. If you can afford to go out and shoot it, you should go out and shoot it because every step closer to AI that you take, you're just ceding control. But you are moving into a world of slightly unpredictable VFX. So if you can afford to shoot it, if you can afford to graphics it or whatever, you should. And I think that's why these big companies find themselves getting it, especially when it's not very good, because it's kind of like, well, you've proved nothing. You've proved that it's a bit sloppy, and you are potentially putting people out of work. So I think it's a difficult line. A lot of the good stuff that's coming out now with AI, people aren't even aware of it, because it was stuff that was sort of like deep in the schedules, stuff that would never have been made if there wasn't AI involved. And the people who have made it are really happy with what they've done because they got it made.
I think you have a really interesting vantage point. I love where we're in, like, that in some ways it did just seem to happen. It's just that it does seem like an osmosis, that maybe it's just the quality of the technology and whether people are publicly using it or just starting to use it and eventually seeping it in. There seems to be a moment that you're describing that it's just starting to show up in
Mhm.
these spaces that at least publicly have expressed reservations. And then I think you make an interesting point because it's a point about the economics. It's because it makes things cheaper or because they couldn't have afforded it to do it, which ultimately is a similar fulcrum. But one thing pushes towards an aspiration of like where maybe we get excited that TV goes. and whether this is the best output from Darren Aronofsky's team or not. Like he's historically someone that pushes us into thinking differently or showing us new things or taking us into new mediums. So as we think about this moment that tools like Kling 3.0 are just making their own case of just being high quality, presumably Google has something to say about it. We're at that stage that nobody's like really hung up on whether or not it's any good. Now we're dealing with broadcasters and distributors that eventually have their own motives to do anything. What's your feeling about this year ahead? Like here we are. I think last year was a year of discovery, as you just sort of walked us
Mm.
through. How do you feel the conversation's moving? A lot of people are at NatP and Realscreen this week, probably hearing it direct from broadcasters. What are you feeling is coming, and what are you preparing for?
I mean, I think that the next year ahead, there are so many projects sort of coming through at the moment. You ask anybody who's doing anything in this space, and they'll tell you there's so many projects coming through. We're still in that little place where there's an awful lot of hesitation. There's still a lot of hesitation. And that you have discussions and you have development rounds, and and it's just they're just waiting for somebody to sign off, somebody to say it's fine. You can go ahead and use it, and you can, actually the work I do, I work within a VFX company as part of my work called Little Shadow, and we're having conversations with lots of broadcasters and lots of production companies, and it's almost getting tedious, the conversation that you have to constantly have about this is the provenance, this is how we're going to prove how everything is generated, this is how we're going to indemnify you, this is how this company's going to indemnify us. And so, because that is really all they're concerned about, they know what's on offer, they know what's on the table, they know what they can do with it, they know the cost of it, and that's really ultimately the biggest motivator for a lot of them. Because and it's not a cynical thing. Most productions have got a lot less money now than they had 3 or 4 years ago, for the reasons that I described at the beginning of our chat. So it is the solution to a lot of people's problems, and everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. But it's almost like we're not quite sure what we're waiting on. What are we waiting on? And is it that someone is going to stand up and go, "It's all right, guys. No one's going to get sued. So go." We kind of sort of we're halfway there. So what was interesting, Fred, and you will know the series Killer Kings really well. And Killer Kings is about 6 months old. Killer Kings was actually a big watershed moment, because finally we had something to point to when people went, "Is this a good idea?" And they go, "Yeah, they did it. It was great." We just need a few more of those things, and they will come this year because, as I said, there's so much stuff in production right now. Um,
And
but
just to clarify, so Max Einhorn, whose company's sort of been a friend of Machine Cinema here in LA for a long time, is his company in partnership with First Look TV. That was like last year. I think they even presented it at AI in the Lot as a bit of a case study here in LA. But what's interesting is I hear you, and I think you're right that that sort of like industry narrative to a lot of people is like, oh, this kind of opened the door. It allowed conversations. It's also like I think from like an audience point of view, it is either the most interesting thing or a confusing thing. Like it was then just a TV show. Like
yeah,
people
that's
then
what
just
I
watched
also
it.
said.
It's
Yeah,
like,
I
and
said the
then
same thing. What was remarkable about it was how unremarkable the whole thing was. That was why it was great. It was great because you were saying to people, "There's a show with AI," and then they went, "When?" And you go, "6 weeks ago." And they what? So what you're basically telling us is this thing that everybody is like losing their shit over has already been on TV? Oh, okay. And we've had here in the UK anyway, I've seen like AI generated ads for things like eToro and stuff. But I know there are promos for TV shows that have been done with AI. Nobody's batted an eyelid. There's obviously been a lot of shows on Channel 5, like I said, and History Channel that have used AI. And because they're not getting the same exposure as something like, I guess, what Darren Aronofsky's doing, is that nobody's really noticed, or nor do they care, because they're not going to make a massive fuss about something that's only getting a minimal amount of viewers. But all of these cases are examples of where it worked or where it went out and nobody made a fuss about it. And these, we need as many of these as we can get. Be brilliant to get something that was like massively mainstream that everybody loved and nobody said was slop. That would be the goal. If we get one or two of those this year, then that's it. We're off to the races. Um,
It's just, and that's
but
just any stage of just
but yeah,
that something's gonna break through that then gets everybody excited. And there's
yeah.
I think the most interesting thing you're describing is that we're sort of exiting the we're doing it in secret phase. I mean, I think we're
Mhm.
going to hear a lot about it in the upfronts this year from some usual suspects. The narrative that even a few people hearted, as you said, is like it's busy, like knows how much is happening that just hasn't been released yet. And again, we're talking about TV. We're talking about in a space where people have already done the hard work of building an audience, so to
Mm.
speak. Now, whether or not that audience is median age 65 and up is another conversation. But the point is other people that we interact with are often like creators that are really telling us about what it takes to build an audience. And it's so interesting to see these parallel narratives of this creator economy where we're making content that's more than proving itself as being relevant and important and showing up in festivals, but then also the business that you are perhaps more focused on is the industrial side of how are people also getting a lot of work. And that same cocktail of innovation and sort of economics still seems to be the thing that people at a decision making level, whether creatively or on the buying side, are interacting with. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I hate to always bring it down to economics and schedules and whatnot, but that is the world in which I've spent my career. But what is good about it, what is great about it, is again, it's that where you get the satisfaction is when you are able to say to someone, to a program maker, yeah, we can do that. That's it. They'll say, could you do this with it? Yes, we can do that with it. And it would be this much, it would take this long. Yeah, it's gonna take that long and it will cost this much. You know, it does feel like this is, for the first time in a long time, it's like you are helping people see the shows the way they want to have them made. Because there was always that barrier of just not being able to afford to shoot this or VFX that, or it's hugely exciting, and I've never been busier, which is great for me. I do have to sort of pinch myself every now and again because it's now a sort of thing that it became a thing for me. It wasn't an intentional pivot. It wasn't like I woke up one morning and said, I'm going to be the AI guy now. But I sort of accidentally have become the AI guy. And it's long may it continue because I think there's definitely, we've not even scratched the surface of the things we can do with it yet.
Yeah,
But as
I'm
long as
excited.
everyone remembers, it's just footage at the end of the day. We're just creating footage. So don't lose your mind over it. It's that footage is worthless unless you can put it into something
Which
that
is then the artist that can do
yeah,
something even more.
so it's just
And,
our job has not changed in any way. It's just the way we're acquiring that footage is slightly different.
I want to pivot soon to our friends at Flick that are going to join us. But anybody have any questions? Obviously, jump in or throw it in. I mean, please follow Colin on socials. I think his dispatches are often very well kind of sort of conceived in terms of where they're living at this intersection of what are you seeing at the industrial shift, where the jobs moving, which is to me the other big narrative. I think we're all excited about creativity and we're all excited to see technology open up new ways of interacting with anything. But it's exciting to see that it's applying itself in places that people are getting to work, especially in the environment that a lot of us are used to, that it hasn't been so great the last several years. And it sounds like you are proof in the pudding, as someone might say, of that experience. How should people look to reach out to you? I mean, are there any things that you're working on that you want to sort of shout out or call to action? How do people connect with you?
I'm trying to do more on LinkedIn because that seems to be where everybody is these days. So yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn. In terms of the stuff, I wish I could talk about because the problem is I said, "What are you working on? What are you doing?" It's like I can't tell you. It's
What does
all
it rhyme with? Does it rhyme with anything?
Oh, unfortunately not. Now. I just have to check. Now it's obviously well out of ND. I'd spent most of last year, bits and pieces of last year, working on a documentary for a Chinese broadcaster called "When Socrates Met Confucius," and we did. It was pretty bold because what we essentially did was we brought real actors in and we created sort of avatars of Socrates and Confucius based on busts and things that we had statues and things that we'd scanned, and then created these sort of scenes where the two of them were interacting with each other. And that it obviously airs in China. I hope it comes over here. Although interestingly, it will be a bit of a time capsule because that was the thing I told you about, where on two occasions we had to say, I need to go back and redo some stuff because VO3 came out during the production of it. Nano Banana came out during the production of it. Runway Act 2, annoyingly, came out the night after we recorded the actors doing their thing, and we had focused entirely on their faces because we thought we were using Act 1. You know, it was the perfect example of a production chasing the tech. And I think the sort of general rule of thumb that everyone quotes is like, it's like 3 to 4 months. If you do something with AI and you don't get it out within 3 to 4 months, there's a chance it's going to look old. And that's crazy in this, when you
Matt.
consider just 3 to 4 months is not old in TV world. So yeah, there's lots of things that are coming out. Maybe I'll start posting about them on LinkedIn. So follow me, and I'll post as they start to appear.
All right. Well, as always, appreciate the knowledge. I've enjoyed having our own just private versions of this conversation, but I'm glad other people got to meet you today. And obviously, if anybody's on the other side of the Atlantic pond, definitely reach out to Colin to connect and work together, hang together. But I love the way you've been processing this and sharing your experience. And please share your, however people can reach you in the chat here. But I'm going to bring up our friends from Flick that some of us here in LA got to meet in person because we did a couple events with them end of last year. I'm going to bring up Brennan. And Brennan, just because I also know you might be demoing, and at some point Google Meet has its limits. Are there any other core team members we want to bring up so that it all fits on this nice tile system that Google's created for us? And you're muted, possibly.
I think Stafford is here.
Okay, cool. All right, I'll bring up Stafford.
How's it going?
No, for everyone, both of you. And also, obviously, that Natalia was a big part of our interaction with you guys. I'm sorry she couldn't join us today, but we got to be homies with her first before we met the whole team. But I'll just say here in LA, and Min, I think, made the initial connection with you guys. We just had the joy of getting to meet your whole team. We had a cool event in Laurel Canyon, which is among the cooler destinations we've had for our MCLA community. And I think what's interesting to me is that I think our second event, the tool that is formerly known as Flick and still known as Flick just turned into something else, which is just exciting to see how as tool developers, technology creators, that's how rapid the development is and the creativity that even the technology itself is in such a stage of evolution as you guys find your opportunity to present it. So obviously, Brennan, this isn't your first time playing with technology. You were at Snapchat for 10 years as an engineer, and you're a Y Combinator founder. You and your team, and you had a great exit in 2019. And you know a lot about math, according to your bio. So I'm excited to know that mathematics pays off. I tell my kids that it's worth it. But anyway, I'm going to throw it over to you guys to introduce us to Flick and what you're working on. And hopefully we get to see it today.
Yeah, you'll definitely get to see it. Hey, I'm Brennan. Yeah, I mean, so I think a little bit of backstory on myself that predates the Snapchat stuff was I grew up in LA. So my dad was actually an editor. And so I was around editing bays and the filmmaking process intensively through my young years. And then I got into computer science and economics and math later in life just because I was drawn to more of the technical side of computers and how computers did things, and not just the actual programs. But I think that's carried over to what we're doing today. I can walk you through a little bit of the demo, but maybe staff, you want to say something?
Yeah, Flick has been very exciting for us. We've been able to demo with a lot of our creative friends, and they're super excited to actually get the product and use it. Um, so really excited for Brennan to show you guys what we built.
Cool. Share. Oh, whatever.
If you're trying to share audio, it tends to play better as a tab on Chrome for what it's worth.
Yeah, there's a lot of tabs I'm going to be going through. So can you guys all see this? Cool. Um, Yeah, I mean, so fundamentally, I think the way to understand what we've done with Flick, and I think what changed since the first demo was we kind of think of it almost like a magic wand. And this is a piece of software that you can kind of cast a spell, and you can create virtually kind of anything. I think we're going to pioneer text to anything instead of text to image or text to video, but it is the workspace and the workforce. So we've basically put an agent behind almost every part of the creative and content production process. I'll just skip here, but from writing to design to producing to editing to organizing. So this is the place that you can ideate, you can do research, you can write a script, you can edit that script. The agent can also do all of that for you. You can design anything, it can generate any image that you could ever imagine. I'll show you some stuff that we've been generating, and it can also produce the videos. So it uses we have Veo and Kling and Sora and all the top models in here, and we've actually taught the agent how to edit those videos together, which is very exciting. So kind of end to end, wherever you are in that process, it can help you with that. I think one of the big breakthroughs, and this is a little bit kind of on the nerdier side of things, is um, we were running into a lot of issues with the initial versions of the product because this looks like thank you. Um, we were running into a lot of issues with producing videos. We originally set out and we were like, let's make an agent that can actually make a 2 minute or 3 minute video with a cohesive storyline and consistent characters and consistent spatial reasoning. And what you realize is that video is arguably one of the most complex and difficult things for a computer to do because it is not only dealing with space and time. So you have kind of this four-dimensional story that is taking place and everything kind of has to stay consistent. And if one character is sitting on a couch in one frame and then they move to the next couch, like that has to stay consistent. But you're also dealing with all the prerequisite assets before that. So you have your script, you have your PDFs, you have your visions, you have your mood board, you have your storyboard, you have your characters, your locations, you have MP3s, you have MP4s, you have all these different files. And so we've designed the entire experience around a virtual file system. So you can bring in all of your different files. Yes, got the link. You can scroll through that marketing page. You can join the waiting list as we're on the call, but it's extremely powerful. And we've been kind of blown away by just building on top of this insight. Another thing that we've done, because I mean, we've spent a lot of money on generations and we've done a lot of generations. I think we did over 150 million views just testing things last year. And so we, understand these models very well. And one of the biggest things with them is that they make mistakes. And it's kind of like a slot machine. You pull it, and sometimes Nano gives you the right image, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes Veo gives you a great line of dialogue, sometimes it doesn't. So there is a self-correcting loop within Flick. So after it does something, after it takes action, after it generates something, it will actually observe what it did and it will fix those mistakes. So this was an example of like generating concept art. It looks at those, finds an error, and then it's like, cool, they're good now. Um, and then the other thing that we've done is we built upon, I don't know if you guys are familiar with skills, but there's this new thing for agents called skills. It's a way to take the generalized kind of like average of these LLMs and these models and specialize them. So you get this massive either intelligence or capability boost. And so we focused our skills on kind of the creative and content realm. And we've built skills that really understand what good looks like. How does it know an error? It kind of understands what the original goal was and the original intent of what you were trying to do. And it looks at that. And then it looks at what it said it was going to do and then compares that. So it's like if you're supposed to have a straight on character portrait and the nano generation or the seed dream generation comes up and it's from a high angle, it'll be like, oh, this is from a high angle, not straight on. Let me regenerate, something like that. Okay, cool. So now I'll play a little short video just so you can see it in action because I don't think we have enough time to go through like a full project. I'll show you the video and then I'll walk through some example projects so you can start to see the breadth and the depth of what is possible with it. So this is a minute long video for the company Anduril. If you guys aren't familiar, Anduril is a kind of new age defense company. They build weapons, hardware, and software for kind of the US military. It was founded by Palmer Luckey. It's a pretty cool company. Um, is there a Flick Discord? Not yet. If you want to help us start it up, would love that, but we're going to get on that very soon. Um, so this is for Anduril. And as you'll see, this kind of goes through the full pipeline of like coming up with the concept, generating the starting frames, putting those into videos, adding music, and putting it into an editor. That was a little quick preview. Are there any questions right now before I get into the other projects?
I mean,
So,
obviously, always exciting to see, in the competitive landscape. I mean, there are other people with tools to interact with creators and making stuff. I guess it's always interesting to think about how you see the opportunities, and how you see the needs of the creator, the needs of the marketplace. I mean, I think as we're walking through, it's interesting to hear your thinking as founders, right?
yeah, I mean, so we've kind of yeah, kilograms. We have built the tool in-house with our own in-house creatives who, through the magical cursor and Claude code, have kind of become engineers for us. So we've built it with the creator in mind. And I think that's kind of where a lot of the insights came from in terms of how do you organize all the assets? How do you support each part of the creative process? How do you make it, as easy as possible to get to what you want, but also as controllable as possible. So there is, a document editor in here. You can go in, you can make changes. There's a canvas. You have full editing capability, and there's a video editor. So you can go in through and you can tweak whatever you want. So you can it can be super automated, or you can go through and be all manual. It is credit based. It's credit based. So this is your home screen. You have a profile up here. Um, you can buy and reload credits. You can also subscribe, and those gives you that gives you a certain amount of credits per month. And then each thing that you do just consumes credits at a different amount. So the language models and just chatting is very affordable. And then as you go up, image and music and video, those get more expensive because those are just more computationally expensive. And for you guys, if you guys do join the waiting list and we get you in the product, we're going to give you $10 to start of free credit so you guys can play around with it.
That's
Can you
amazing.
remake?
Very exciting for that. Few questions coming in. What's the pricing structure like? Maybe you just showed us.
Yeah, it's just credits based, and we'll give you a breakdown of what each model costs and how you can consume credits, and based on what you're generating. Were there other questions?
And then there's a question of, can we remix it or copy the agents and tailor them?
Yes, you can. That's a big thing that we're focused on. Is right now, you can give the agent custom instructions. So that's step one. And then step two, within the next couple weeks, you'll be able to create your own skills. So say if you have a given workflow or you've already built a skill, you can bring that into Flick and the agent will adapt to that. So we want to give you guys as much control as possible over the experience. So yeah, to answer that question.
Winston, you had a question if you want to come up.
Oh, cool. So I just had a question about the agents and the editing on Flick for the video. Are you saying that it kind of works like Sora 2 or Clean 3, where it'll edit the video together for you? Or how does it work?
Yeah, let me show you. So over here, you can see that we just said, let's edit it all together now, generate a cool song, then put it all together in an editor. So the editor and the agent is able to understand what is in each video, understand what is being said or the sound within the video, as well as generating the music. And then it can edit to the music. And so it's able to edit on beat. So say if you drop in like a hip hop song, it'll actually edit to the beats. Is there an integration? What was that question?
Other question. Did that answer your question, Winston?
It did, yes.
Cool. Thank you. Danny, is there an integration to the user's file system for I'm assuming premise organization as opposed to just on platform?
Yeah, right now there is not. That is something that we're going to be building in over the next a couple weeks. Is what we're calling kind of sandbox or local mode. So you'll be able to download this as a Mac app, and then bring in files that are already on your system or are already on your workspace.
Super interesting.
Does that include working with local models?
That we have not roadmap, but if you want to email us and we'll talk about that for sure because that would be great if you are running local models.
Good question. And then David had a question that can we explore other people's agents and share our own?
Yeah, so that's going to be kind of like the skills marketplace. So if you build kind of a workflow or kind of like a mini agent, you'll be able to share that with somebody on your team or the wider community.
And I don't know, maybe you've sort of said this, but I'm just always curious. As a business, is it B2B ultimately the big play and finding enterprise customers, or is it really creating a creator forward kind of tool? How do you look at that choice even at a design stage?
I think it's kind of like catered and built for the prosumer to enterprise. So somebody who actually needs to produce content, is doing it kind of on a daily basis. That could be, individual creator, or it could be a 5,000 person company.
And obviously Stafford, because you're up here. Forgive me for not giving you a proper intro, but as a co-founder, anything you'd add to where Brennan's been taking us?
I think a couple things. I think number one, I think AI models have been taught to be average, and what we have done is force them to be good. And I think that when you're a creator, that's very important to get the detail that you want in your workspace or at home. I think someone has a question.
Go ahead. I'll bring her up as you didn't mean to interrupt your flow.
So I think just like high fidelity creator content is missing unless you're like the 0.001% of AI creators and know how to use 10 different tools. And I think localizing all of these tools into one specific workflow with a file system is super helpful for efficiency and output in general.
Awesome. Super
Let
interesting.
me
Evelyn, did you want to chime in on that? Like Evelyn, you had a question. And you might be muted if you're trying to talk. We'll come back to Evelyn. Interrupt us if you suddenly your mic comes on. But you were about to say something, Brennan.
Yeah, I just wanted to walk through some projects, guys. I see some questions that might be answered by me going through this. So this is actually a um, project that we did a little bit, I think, after the Gen Jam, but I've always been fascinated with when the CIA was operating in Laurel Canyon in the 1960s because we live in Laurel Canyon. So I had the agent kind of come up with a very short story. Was I like this guy? I like you, David. So he wrote this script. This is a full screenwriting software that is also agentic. So you have access and you can edit this inline. Are the credits paying for? Yes, they are. You can have general scene heading, action characters. You can make edits in line. Can support any type of screenplay, and the agent can also edit and write for you. So if you're like, hey, can you make this a little bit funnier? You can do that as well. Um, so just showing kind of like a linear workflow. So it took this script, and then I was like, okay, let's generate the assets for this. So then it generated the character assets. So this was the CIA op and the kind of two hippies. This was the location that it was set in, and I didn't have to prompt. So that's kind of the beauty of the skills that we built in is you can prompt if you want, but the agent also knows how to prompt these different models. So it wrote this prompt for Nano, generated this image. It wrote this prompt. It understands the context of the story, kind of the visual style, and you can go in and you can tweak whatever you want. So you can come in here and you can click edit, and you can make changes here. Or if you want to change something specific, you can, drop some dots.
Here.
What was that?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. How are you? Tired. Too much things to do.
Uh, I don't. I don't.
Yeah.
I should start talking to somebody else.
Oh,
I try to mute.
Field, you're unmuted.
No. Um,
There we go.
so it took that, and then it took those assets, that story, and then generated a presentation. So the agent fully understood what was going on, the overall context, and then was able to put together a small deck. So say if you were presenting this to a studio or a production company, you're like, this is my vision. How does it compare to LTX? I think LTX and Free Pick and Higgsfield and even Flow by Google and Runway, we consider them kind of point solutions. They have they're supporting different models, but you have to go in there and you have to prompt yourself. You have to organize those files yourself on your own computer, um, and they're not fully agentic. So let me just. So this is kind of like a starter project. So over here is where your file system goes. This is your main.
And maybe close the chat window that's in the middle of your we can see, like, you seeing our
Oh,
chat.
oh,
Yeah, there we go.
oh. Google's got to fix that, man. So this is your main workspace, and then this is your chat and agent over here. So you have agent mode, you have generate mode, and you have chat mode. In agent mode, you have Sonnet 4.5, hopefully Sonnet 5 very soon, Opus, Gemini Pro, and Gemini Flash. Um, Generate mode, you can go in here and you can prompt manually. So you have Nano Pro, Dream, VO, Dance, Hilux, Kling, Sora, Morello, 11 Labs, Suno, and we're going to be adding more models. Um, you can control these as much as you want. They have all the parameters. You can generate 4K images. You can generate a batch of 4, 16:9, 9:16, whatever you want. And then you have chat mode. Um, so then you can come in here and
I'm
say,
looking at that interface. Do you draw inspiration from Claude in a big way? Because even their most recent update that has like co-work, chat, and code, that sort of three-way breakdown. Is that something you draw inspiration from a design point of view, or
we originally designed it actually inspired by Cursor. Cursor has kind of a very similar kind of agentic user experience. And we kind of took that and we're like, okay, let's be Cursor for content and let's be Cursor for
wow,
creatives.
clean pitch? Yeah.
Yeah. So you have that. And then you have your canvas where you can drop things into, and then you have your video editor. So kind of the main creative tools that you need to produce or generate anything.
I mean, really, I mean, obviously, questions keep coming in, and are you in the mid flow of a demo, or I was going to ask you a
I don't
question?
know. You can ask questions.
I mean, you know, it's definitely as advanced as anything I've seen in terms of really saying how do you throw agents inside of a creative process that even still feels protective of the creative process. I'm just always curious, like, how do you look at this, and what do you see as your moat, so to speak? Is it going to be like a specific workflow within this that then you guys have cracked and there's sort of a way to design it, or is it just audience reach, a type of consumer? How do you guys as founders imagine the positioning?
I think there's two things. I think one is there's kind of two priorities in terms of the business, and I think that will impact the moats. But one is focusing and making sure that this is an incredibly kind of safe space for you, that you feel safe using the product, that you're able to iterate and make mistakes, and the agent is there to kind of hold your hand, and you feel like you can be really creative, and there's not that feeling of anxiety. And then also just technically like that your assets are safe, that you can, if you want, you can run this on your local machine, that you feel protected, and really building that kind of trust because we care about that and we've experienced that ourselves. And then I think two is the collaboration features. We do have this file system, and I think what makes this file system amazing is that multiple people can work in this project together. So if you have a team of 2 or a team 10 or 20 people, they can all work in this kind of shared workspace. So I think with those two things, I think those are going to be the big defensive moats.
Makes sense. No, I think that safety, but the way that it has a personality that seems to speak to the creator versus this sort of like relinquishing their control. I don't know. I think that's going to be an interesting friction point for a lot of people as they discover this for themselves. And I mean, I was just seeing this comment from Justine Moore, kind of throwing out vibe coding in general, just as an adjacent category of the space, and just that, I don't know where she gets this data, but some idea that like barely 1% of the world even does this, even though it's the whole pitch is look how easy it is for anybody to do. So I think there's this, presumably for a company building in this space, an exciting idea that some version of 99% of the world is available to you, to interact with, but how do you meet them where they are? And I think thinking about safety, thinking about their point of view as someone who cherishes the creative process is really smart.
Yeah, and I think we're definitely trying to meet people where they are, and I think that's kind of why we designed the product in a way that feels familiar. I think the file system feels familiar to a lot of people because we've all used computers for the last 30 years of our lives. And I think, like we said, making it a really easy and safe space, I think is going to be very important. Somebody like my mom, for example, I showed her a demo and she was mind blown because she does this all day. She writes reports, she creates decks, she has to create visuals, and she's not going to adopt Higgsfield. She's not going to get into LTX. But as soon as I showed her this, she immediately got it and she's already started using it. Same with my brother, who's like the biggest skeptic and AI hater of all time. We did a demo with him and he was like, dude, this is the greatest AI I've ever seen. Like he was on the floor. And so I think those are people that don't traditionally use these types of software, but got really excited when they saw this. So I feel it feels like we have something.
Question to that: is there a website link for the tool from Seth?
So the marketing pages is here. You can join the wait list. If you join the wait list, we'll get you on. We'll give you $10 of free credits, and we're available 24/7. We can help you out, solve any issues. You can also, when you join, you can share feedback. There's a little feedback thing in here as well. Um,
Cool. Obviously, everybody likes the word free. Is that something you wanted to drop into the chat today, or should we follow up as a blast to all attendees?
yeah, let me drop this here.
No, no sweat. And but I was just because I just wanted to make sure people understood where that was going. Sasha's asking if you have an API in your roadmap.
PI. Can you define
API,
PI?
an API.
Oh,
Private investigator too. It's very important to have private investigators on your roadmap.
yeah.
I'm,
I was like,
go ahead. Sorry.
it's not in the immediate 1 month roadmap, but it is something that we're considering now that we're seeing the capabilities. I think that this is definitely something that people can build upon. We want to kind of inspire those builders.
That's great. Someone was just generally asking, how do you protect IP? I think you used the word security and safety before. Is there a positioning on that?
Yeah, so there's a few things. One, you're going to have a compliance agent. So whatever you generate, we're not going to stop you from generating anything because I don't think that's, a part of the experience. But if you do generate something, you can fire up the compliance agent and it will look through all the content that you've generated and kind of flag things and say, hey, this kind of looks like a character from Kung Fu Panda. You may want to get this cleared with DreamWorks. And so it'll kind of give you like a bibliography of the content. And so if you do want to monetize it, it'll help you with that.
Cool. Evelyn's asking, when is this going to be available?
Very soon. Very soon.
So early looks here for
And
sure.
in the next week or two.
And your interest in our chat group, you want to close that window so we can see where there you go. Sorry about the Google functionality there. Jen.
Hey, yeah. It was my question about the API. I may have missed it. You may have mentioned it. What's the situation with the privacy of the files?
So right now, everything is secure and safe, and that we have a zero data retention policy. We are going to be building in the kind of local sandbox version. So if you do want everything to just live on your computer, you'll have that as well. But that's not in there currently.
Got it. Thank you. What's a good way to reach out to you?
I can drop my email in the chat.
Thank you. I just don't want to take up more time with more
Sure. No, thanks,
questions like
Rox,
that.
for both of you and anybody. If there's ways that you want people to reach out to Flick and the team, if you guys can share in the chat. And again, we can also do a blast out to everybody if there's any more formal follow up. And then Alden's
Thank you.
asked, maybe adjacent to this question, do you have a careers page? She would be interested in applying as a software engineer.
We are definitely looking for more engineers. Yeah, we have a team of 12 people right now, but I think with what we want to do, we definitely need to at least double the team size. So yeah, please reach out.
Good question. Love the jobs energy. Really cool, guys. I just we're right approaching time, and I'm just wondering, was there any other layer to the tool you wanted to share today, or maybe final questions for folks?
I'm just kind of showing you guys some really cool stuff that it did. This is like a
Absolutely.
Wes
Danya,
Anderson.
what's your stack, by the way?
What's the stack? Completely
Just
proprietary.
just general for you were soliciting software engineers, so it was just, what's your stack? What's your
Oh,
software
what
stack?
on the back end, it is Python, and we run kind of Kubernetes and containers for the infrastructure. On the front end, it is a TypeScript React project. Those both communicate kind of through workers and through a Redis connection. So it's kind of like, a full stack application.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, you could create like a cooking show, a music video for Tyler the Creator, uh, you know, product photography for Apple. This is for a fashion brand in all different types of styles, and it really can push the creative limits of whatever you're doing. It can do decks very well. So if you're presenting any idea This is for the end roll. So it can do any type of visual style and kind of, behind the scenes, like I was saying, kind of with the video production, having a really deep understanding of both space and time. So it's able to kind of understand a given space. I can actually like create a floor plan when you're working on any video project, which also has latent applications. You can use this for actually anything like interior design or architecture. Um, and it kind of has this temporal understanding of whatever the scene is, and it can do it in any style. So it can be 2D, Pixar, live, live action, whatever it is that you want. And if you want to do Kung Fu Panda 5, you can do Kung Fu Panda 5.
So
Maybe
far,
explain the IP around Kung Fu Panda 5. Someone else.
Yeah. So, like I said, we're not going to stop you from generating anything. If you want to create, Kung Fu Panda 5, and that's just going to live for you, and that's going to be amusing to you, that's great. But if you do want to monetize it, or you want to publish it, or you want to go sell it, we'll help you, and we'll say, hey, this looks like Kung Fu Panda 5. You may want to get this cleared.
it's very interesting positioning. I think we're right at time. Guys, again, we're just grateful to have been able to hang out with you twice last year. We'd love to sort of see where the tool is landing and hopefully get to play again. Grateful our Machine Cinema LA community got to really play with this, but I love that you're sharing this with the wider batch and that we'll make sure to do a blast to those links to get people on the tool and giving you guys feedback and getting to play with it. But love Cursor for content. I suspect you've said that before, and it works well in other rooms. That's a great pitch, and I think very interesting to create that entry point of you could create something that's using copyright, but you're allowing somebody to play, which is basically what the internet generally
Right.
allows. You're not going to find it in one place; you'll find it somewhere else. But to then say, and by the way, if you think you're making any money off this, go talk to your lawyer and look forward to the lawsuits. But the but that seems like a very candid take on where creators are, and I think where people want to play, where people want to experiment, and really really cool tool. Again, we've gotten to play with it twice. I feel lucky to keep learning about it. You have an amazing team, and Laurel Canyon's a very cool place to call work. Thanks everybody as always for showing up. Thank you to the Flick team. If Colin, I think you're still here. Have a good rest of your week. I hope nobody has the cold I have. And take care. We'll see you next time.